good to go. Got a couple other people watching. Well, great, man. Well, let's get started. So, thanks for coming over. I know it's kind of a tough time to fit this in with Christmas and everything else going on. I know you guys are traveling, right? Heading out for
Sacramento.
Sacramento, California. That'd be awesome, man. That's gonna be a haul too with two kids.
She just told me this morning.
Yeah.
6-hour layover.
Oh.
I know.
So what I did with the military is you get the Amex card, and then you're able to use the sky lounges and all that stuff, which is essential for when you got kids, because that's tough. But yeah, no, I'm glad we're doing this right before Christmas. We've got all of our like holiday traditions coming on, but it's an important thing to do. I did want to share you one. My favorite holiday tradition that we do is my wife goes to a party with some friends, and she bakes a ton of cookies. That's like part of her family thing. So she'll bake 1,000 cookies, and then she brings some, and then all of her friends they bring theirs, and then they like scramble them up. Like everybody gets some, and they bring them back. And I took a picture of it this morning. So this is the spread that I woke up to this morning, and my kids are wanting to eat this for breakfast. So and I'm like, we haven't even finished our Halloween candy. Like we still have like a big old mound of that, and it's just, now we've got like this to look forward to. So what do you guys do for the holidays typically?
We just hang out with our neighbors and our ex-neighbors,
Yeah.
our
Guys that are leaving.
basically our Florida family. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know you can cook. I've been over to Mike and Allison's house a few times and experienced their cooking, and we used to do it. And I found this picture too. So this is when one of the first few things we did together. There's Mike and I cooking over at Pickett's Outdoor Market. I think they're actually having one of those today. But that was one of the first things we did with Preserve Navarre is, Mike came to one of the meetings that we had, and he wanted to get involved. And I was like, well, we're just doing outreach in the community, getting to know people, kind of figuring out, how we can plug in and help. And we met Terry Light over at Pickett's. And I was like, what can we do at Pickett's to help out the market? Because we're not selling anything. We're just trying to get to know people and all that.
Didn't
talk to
compete.
them. And she was like, well, you could set up here in the back and, whatever, if you want to like cook something or whatever. And Mike proved himself early and often because he started cooking bacon. He would bring out the supplies. He'd bring out the gas. You can see there we've got like our little griddle and just cooking away bacon. We'd be giving it away for free. So I know you can cook, and I know your wife can cook. So maybe we can do something together. Got a couple comments coming in. Amy says cookie swaps are a military tradition. Absolutely, Amy, because you got people from all over, right? Like that have gotten recipes and stuff from Germany and Japan and Korea and all over the U.S. and bringing the best of the best. So, yeah, maybe you can get some of those take back to your kids. But so what Mike is here to talk about today, we've got, basically maybe 30, 45 minutes for this interview, is talking about the water system. And this is an important thing to talk about. For me, and I'm curious to hear your take on this, I'm excited to be where we're at. It feels like not long ago, we were in a very different spot, sitting right here. You and I were talking about, corruption that we had found at the water system and dangers that were there. And now there's been so much that has changed, right? Now we're at the point where we're running a candidate. But that kind of brings the question of, who are you? Because I know you, we've known each other for a few years, but a lot of people don't know you yet. And if they're going to look at voting for you for the water system, then they're going to want to know, more about what you stand for, who you are. So why don't you just take it from the top? How long have you lived in Navarre, Mike, and what brought your family here?
Yeah, so I joined the military late 2000, November. I believe I even missed Thanksgiving, so missed Thanksgiving and Christmas.
I know what that's like, yeah.
And got here in July 2001. Remember stepping out of the truck at the hotel in Fort Walton and going, I don't even understand how people can live like this. It was so humid, and coming from Sacramento where it's very similar but no humidity. Anyway, so that's what brought us here. The military brought us here in 2001, and my enlistment ran out in 2006. Couldn't get a CJR, so the career job reservation. And really, Well, I forget what number I started out, 75, 100, got all the way down to single digits, and it's a number game in the military. And thought about cross training, but felt like I'd go civil service or do something like that, and it just didn't work out.
And you did some tours overseas, right, as well?
Yeah, we did 3.
Can you talk about that? Where you
Yeah, some of them, and I'm sure some of them the NDAs have ran out, but they're interesting stories you tell. You know how you can tell little tidbits of information, and they're kind of neat stories. Our mission at that time was to build parking ramps so we could project air power, right?
Yep.
So we started off in Qatar, showed up, stayed in one of Dynacor's warehouses, and then got a couple hours sleep, started building tents.
Yep.
And then the second time I went back, or no, I think it was the third time I went back. But anyways, it was like you go back and now you're tearing up the stuff that you put up, for the next phase of it. So it's kind of interesting to see how that works.
Yeah.
And
so you did some tours overseas, served in the military, and then instead of retraining, you stayed here. But why not go back to Sacramento? Why not go back to California? What led
question.
Your family and yourself?
Because that was the thought, and I think honestly, I had got sort of passed over for some things by saying, hey, I'm going to get some training and then go back home. And then after a few years, you realize at that time you're still thinking you're going to stay in the military. So, you're on, how do I, improve your situation in the military. But it was ultimately that the area made us want to stay here because it's awesome. Went back home a few times and realized, did I really want to live like that? And came back home and was like, I think I'd rather live like this. And, and basically that's...
Get used to that heat.
Well, yes, you dry out. But
no, I relate to that, man, because my family is very similar. We used to come down here for, vacations and all that kind of stuff, but I never really thought about living here. I did want to get stationed here. And then when I did, I'm like, we vacationed here, but living here, is that what we wanted? Is it the same as vacation?
Right.
Is it... is there things I don't know about, or is it incredible? And it was incredible. I still love it, just as much. And I still have to pinch myself sometimes. I'm like, man, we're like living in paradise. You drive over that bridge and stuff, and it's beautiful, right? So I relate to that a lot. So you and I met a couple years ago because you came to one of the Preserve Navarre meetings and started talking about, how do you preserve what we love? How do you get involved in our group and what we're doing? Well, fast forward a couple years, like we're talking about, and now you're running for the water board. So how do you go from, I think we're going to stay here, I think we're going to make it home, to I want to run for a position and make a difference? Well, what leads you to that?
Well, I think when somebody introduced me, said go see Wes, go listen to him, or however that went, was that I think at that time I was pretty mad about how I was being treated by the water system, and I think I brought up, how do you fix for me at that moment, that was the biggest. How do we change that? Because what you're saying, until you did some of these things, how do you fix what you were saying? So again, I think it's just another cog in the wheel, but that's how we found each other in a way, was through the water system, was me saying, oh my gosh, this is how it is, and going, how do you change it? And still, honestly, in my opinion, you're the only one out there trying to do anything. I'm trying to figure out how you do something, and I'm glad that we met.
Well, to be honest, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. So I'm still learning as I go, because there's some of that, change in your perspective, right? Coming from the military, we have, I moved 3 times, right, in the military. Like, we were going from Texas to Virginia to Alabama. And when you're moving every couple of years, you start to figure out what's going on in an area, and then all of a sudden you're gone. And you're like, well, I was going to vote for that guy, but now I've left, right? Or I was going to look into that issue, but I've got they call it a PCS, right? Now I've got to change my station, and now I'm headed to the new spot. Once you start to make a place home, all of a sudden now you're like, okay, I want to invest in this for long term. Let me figure out what's really going on. That was the change for me. I had been here about 3 years, and then I was like, okay, this is our forever home. My wife says, this is where we're staying. Great. Now let me start looking into this stuff for real.
Exactly.
And that's when I started looking at the water system. I mean, having conversations over there at Pickett's, talking to you, talking to a bunch of other local business owners.
Exactly.
They said, hey, if you want to make a difference in your community, you got to look at what's going on here.
I think somebody said that the other day, was like, oh, go talk to this business. They tried to expand and got some crazy bill. And I said, you know, honestly, it's the same story every time. It's like, if you talk to every single business, you know, you would never get anything done. So at some point you have to start working towards getting things done.
So what would you say are the biggest problems facing the water system today? Because even since then, there's been a lot of change, right? So you did have this CEO who had this long criminal history and international crime, all this other stuff. He's out, right? In terms of his position, he is out. His finance director gone. One of the board members left. There's a lot of flux and change. But for the system as a whole, what do you see as the biggest challenges?
I think changing the perception of how people see them, right?
Okay.
You know, I mean, I think that when you even say hauling of our water system, I think people, you know, gasp in a way. You know,
do.
I mean, ooh,
they definitely do.
What happened now? What they do now?
Yeah.
And that's bad. That's not good.
Yeah, it's a huge
It's a perception
problem
on the community.
Because you think of like water, what should be, you know, less controversial than water, especially here with an aquifer and everything else. And you start looking into it, and you see like there's been issues with not just the Passio, but the one before that, and then there was a fire before. It's constantly been this controversy, and it's like, why in the world should we be arguing about something that should be as simple as water? You know, you order it, you get it,
yep,
you know, and then you pay your bill. And yet, you know, it's tied to so many other things, and there's so much secrecy. Here's a question from Nancy, and if you guys have questions, I've got some that have been emailed to me, but I'm happy to put yours to the front as you ask them. Nancy asks, what can be done about the ambiguous way tap fees are decided? So we were just talking about this. You know, the tap fees is what the water system places on new businesses, and it's not always clear what they are and how they formulate it. And then there's discounts that they give to certain businesses and not others that they've admitted. She said, would it be possible to make the formulas, if there are any, transparent and visible to the members?
I think that it's online, and you look at it, and honestly, I've looked at it, and it's very difficult to follow. And some of it's like, what in the world? If I have a warehouse, what does it matter how many doors I have on my warehouse as to the impact I will be charged? So I think that they can say that they do post it, but so it's like going to a
tax code for the federal government.
Yes, because if you go to a restaurant and they have 100 items, you know, can we shrink it and make it easier to follow, you know, is a thought. And I think the big one too is like when somebody does want to do an expansion, or say somebody else buys a business, that they get impacted again. It's like, how many times can you charge for the same thing? So I think that one takes some doing.
Yeah. So tap fees is one. Talk to me about the golf course. So that's one, you know, I heard you speaking at an event a few days ago, and this was like the big, you know, controversy. And for those that may not be aware, there's a golf course up there, 399. It's beautiful. It's in the Hidden Creek area. It's absolutely gorgeous. I've been out there a bunch of times. There used to be a restaurant there, and I think restaurants before that. There's not there. There's a little tiny bar that's left. But it's tied to the water system. So you have the water system picking up taxes and things like that for them, managing it. Yeah. So there's this kind of interesting dynamic of you're paying a water bill, but then it's going to subsidize a golf course, which is a completely different industry in a lot of ways. So going from a utility company to something that's more entertainment. But then there's concerns about, well, it's kept the golf course there, and people are worried about where it might go if things were to change. So can you talk about that? Like, what would you do? So let's just say that you had a bunch of people on the board who were listening to you, and they asked you, what should we do with the golf course? What would you say?
Well, that's a very broad question.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways you could tackle it. But it sounds like without the restaurant and all these things, that it's not a viable business. So you need somebody to get in there to run it as a golf course, and a profitable one.
Right.
So how we own the golf course, I was always curious why you would own the golf course, and it's because they get to spray the affluent on the course. So then at that meeting the other day, somebody said that it was X amount of gallons, and I'm like, hang on a second, I haven't heard that, but not like I know anything. I'm on the outside, I'm not even on the board, I'm just attempting to try to get there. Anyways, is to say, from the numbers after thinking about his question was to say, I don't even know if we use that much water in a day. He's saying 2 million gallons a day, and I'm like, that's insane. And I don't even know if we use that much. But the first thing about the golf course is that's why we own it, is the affluent, so we can spray it. So you would pay for certain things, you would think, by the golf course. But again, what is that? So again, there's all these things we don't get to see. And that why do we not see them as a non-profit member owned? That's
because somebody brought up the golf course at Tiger Point, right? You know,
same
I've been out there,
yesterday too.
Beautiful restaurant.
But they say at the turn there's a restaurant, or there's things to do. So that's where they beat you, is that they're just set up better. So we have to get better at
I've
that.
taken my family there after church, and I think that's kind of showing people is like, this is what happens when you have more responsible ownership of it. People that know what's going on.
Well, that's it, right? You got to put somebody in place. Because another question at the golf course was, should the CEO of Hauling Navarre Water System run the golf course? And I was like, no, because they're two separate things. You want somebody that knows how to run a golf course, and I don't think these people are hard to find. I just don't. I mean, I think that the pay...
They've had offers before, that's for sure.
I think the pay that they're offering is enough to incentivize good people to come.
But I think as part of that contract, it sounds like you've got to keep that space available for the water system to use, right? And then you can't let it be destroyed. I mean, people are worried that, someone's going to come in and bulldoze that golf course and then it's just turning it into homes. And that's not what any of us want. I don't think anybody wants that, except maybe some outside developers or something. But, as part of that contract, okay, you're going to run this, make it profitable, and then bring back some of those proceeds not only for yourself, but for us. And then at that point, you're paying your own taxes.
I know, wouldn't that be nice?
We should be, getting
lower our.
Yeah, absolutely. You can contribute back to who gave you the contract. So I like that a lot better, because I remember going out there and it was like the Skimmer was the restaurant. We go out there and eat, and then people told me that there was even, there was other restaurants before that they liked just as much. So there's definitely been some history there. And I think that'd be a great place in Navarre. They've had
shaking the table.
Yeah, they've had like political debates, and they've had events out there. Lots of clubs have met out there. We met out there as a group for a few times.
Yeah, we did. We did.
So I mean, it's a beautiful space, and I think it's underutilized for sure.
Yeah, utilization, like you said. So we were at St. Sylvester's last weekend, bragging on them because it's a great facility, and we have these great facilities that aren't being used. So. Let's tap into the resources that we have.
Yeah. So let's take a look at this. So this is, some of Mike's campaign material that you've been passing out. Seen this around. I know you passed it out at the meeting before. I know you got some yard signs coming. We've talked about the tap fees. Okay. We've talked about the golf course. Talk to me about these other two things. So let's start at the top with the audit. So, people that don't know, they hear forensic audit. What is that? So what does that mean to you? Why put that on there?
Yeah, to me, I think that means, again, accountability that you and transparency, because I think if you just follow the zeros and ones, I think it leads to hopefully just where you can clean things up, right? Like, hey, I'm spending too much on gas, or, let's start tightening the belt. And I think people instantly get defensive, but we need to figure out where to trim some fat, because we keep getting in every aspect of life, hey, here's another increase, and how can we stop that? So I think for me, that's, hey, we're spending X amount on this. That's what it is.
I think that's what people have warned about, right? Is you had people that were saying, hey, I think there's an increase in the rates coming. I'm worried about this, especially after the former CEO. And then, a lot of the media was like, no, there's not rates coming. Like, they're making that stuff up. Well, now they're talking about it. Now they're talking about raising the rates substantially.
They are.
It's part of their proposed budget, right?
Yes.
So it's clearly coming. And, of course, the reason is why. I remember watching one of the meetings, and, they were struggling to figure out how many employees. Like, the board didn't know how many employees were on the system. And a huge part of that is because I think the former CEO had an agreement where the board really became more advisory than oversight.
Yeah.
And so now you have no oversight. If even your own board's not watching what's going on, even they don't know how many employees are there. Who has any clue then what's really going on? And that's where an audit comes in. So I like that one a lot. Talk to me about the sunshine laws. So what is that for people that don't know?
That's the ability that you have oversight from the state and the county to, if somebody has a question or a problem, that they have an avenue to go down, rather than the stone wall at the front door saying, hey, we're a nonprofit and we don't
right. I mean,
we don't need to tell you anything.
Because I've seen you at the meetings before. I know a lot of people that are probably watching this have been at the meetings before. They ask questions, and then the board says, well, our attorney says, don't talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
Because we might indict ourselves, I guess, for some type of crime. Like, and then that's the end of the question.
High treason.
Like, like what if politicians could do that? They just, plead the fifth every time. Like, hey, congressman, what are you doing for this bill? Sorry, I can't answer that question. My attorney says I should not tell you what's going on. That's a huge problem. So the way I see it is the water system is, whenever it's convenient for them, they claim to be a business, right? They're like,
for profit, not for profit.
We're a business, so we shouldn't have to listen to the sunshine laws or abide by them or any of these government type of oversight or accountability measures. We're a business. But then, what's the virtue of a business? A business has to compete. You know this as a small business owner. Is like, if someone's getting some construction done or cabinets or whatever, they can go with you or they could go with somebody else depending on your price and all those things. With the water system, they've got a 99-year franchise agreement, so they don't have to face competition.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody going to go in there and take over the utility business with a 99-year agreement. So all of a sudden then, they've got the best of the government coming on. So it's like they've thrown off accountability from the private sector, meaning free market competition, and then they've thrown off the government oversight, what little we have, from the state of Florida. So now you've got all of the perks of being government, all the perks of being business, with none of the oversight.
Yep.
So how would Sunshine change that?
I think that, again, it sounds like we're just saying the same things over and over, though, right? I mean, I think that I think it just opens the door. Yeah. Again, for them not to be able to just shut you down. So they will have to be I don't know how
they'll have to report emails, conversations. Yeah, they can't. I know board members can't talk to each other outside of the meetings under Sunshine. That's a big one.
Yeah. Okay. So that's crazy to me, because I think that a lot of times you don't want to get in front of a group of people and not have already having an opinion or figure out what somebody else's opinion is, rather, right? How are you feel about that? And, and you're supposed to figure it out on the fly in front of, a camera, and that just seems a little bit crazy to me.
So so those are some good things that that you stand for, that I appreciate. Talk to me about you, though, because before we get to a couple more of these questions that people have emailed in, there's been a whole lot that's come out, like, about you and your past and your values and who you are, and that's been I've definitely written posts and things like that because I've known you for a while, but people want to hear from you. Tell me about your values. Like, what would you say that you stand for as a person?
Honesty, hard work, and I'm just being a good person.
Yeah.
Treat everybody like you want to be treated.
Yeah.
If nobody's looking, do what you would do no matter what, whether somebody's looking over your shoulder or not, just doing the right thing. I think that's how if I think it's hard or I don't want to do it, that's usually what makes me want to do something even more, is like, don't take the easy way out. I always seem to
no, I hear you. Yeah, no. So I definitely have some thoughts on that, because one of the things that people talk about is mistakes from the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
How have mistakes from your past affected those values? How have they changed the way you see those values, or how have they helped build those values in your life?
I hope that they've made me a better person. you know, that I don't want to do that again, or how can I do that better? Usually is how I think about that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of times you do things right, and then you figure, how can I do it better?
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, wait a second, you know, how I initially did that was the best way.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how I look at things.
Because I look at stuff like, you know, you see the media trashing you online. I've seen the media trash Kerry Smith online, who is running for commissioner. I've seen it, you know, with numerous other people. And my first thought when I see that is, first of all, like, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, right? And everybody has. And so then I say, okay, this person's made a mistake. Maybe it's the same as mine. Maybe it's different than mine. But I look at that, and then I say, okay, is this a trend? Or is this an isolated mistake that a person learned from? Because to me, that's when your character is revealed, right? Is when you've made a mistake and all of a sudden you have to face it, right? That's when you change. Or that's when you double down and you hide it.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
So talk to me about that. Talk to me about that, like with your kids and stuff like that. How do you teach that to them?
I try to tell them and act the same way. So, you know, if you make a mistake, don't try to hide it, because that doesn't help the situation. So just own it and move on. And again, hopefully learn from it. Again, I think when you ask what my core values were, I think, you know, they are simple, because I think if you make it muddy, then there's too many things that you're trying to get right, you know. Just get those few things right and do them well. So
yeah, man, that's awesome. We got a bunch of comments coming in, so we're going to get to these in just a second. But I relate to that, man. Like, I think that's what people want, is they don't expect someone to be perfect, because no one is, but they expect someone to own up. And one of the hardest things with the former CEO was trying to get the truth out, like what actually happened here, you know. And the same thing with the system. You know, as the water system made mistakes, we all know that. Like, we all know that has happened, but getting the truth is really hard. And one of the things I appreciate about you is that you and Allison, you say, yep, you know, things have happened, right? Mistakes have been made in the past, but this is who we are now, right? And we're not defined by those mistakes. And that's, when it comes down to the water system, it's not a personal attack, and it never was.
No.
It has simply been, how do we serve the community by making this better?
No, and I think that I think that's benefited. I think it's a good spot where I'm at right now, running for the board. Was that I think a few years ago when I had another incident with them, was that I think there was a cool down period in between there, and then I got busy finishing some projects recently, and they're done, and so I have a bit even more freedom than I normally have.
Nice.
But is that I'm not so mad, you know, and then. We can move forward in a better place, you know.
Yeah. How do we make this better? That's what.
Because you can't live at that level. So, you know, let it cool down.
Yeah.
And then I think you could be more effective. And that's where it is frustrating when people say or bring up negative things in your past, because it's like, you know, let's move past that point and let's do something positive.
Yeah, 'cause that was the issue with the CEO, is like we said, okay, all of this has been hidden, it's come out now, and then what was his response? His response was to lie about it, try to continue hiding it, and that's where the board turned on him and said, all right, you gotta go, you just lied to us. Like, whereas when you look at you, again, stuff is going to come out when you run for office, but then you say, yep, this happened.
Oh, we both
loved, you know, what
we both knew said, that.
You know, it's like, yep, we knew this was going to come out. It's fine. Here's the truth of it, and seeing the actual story. Because what she told me was, it's a success story. When I called her and I said, hey, what's this whole deal? She said, oh yeah, you know, this is what happened that night, and this is where we are now. And I'm grateful. Still painful to talk about, but I'm grateful for what happened, because it was a turning point in his life, and ever since then, it's been incredible.
Well, you and I have talked about it a little bit, and I don't want to get defensive and try to say that I was right or my wife was wrong or the cop wrote something that I don't believe true. I just don't see anything positive from that. So I was just going to touch on what you said, that, you know, what do you take away from that it's a success story, and
that's awesome.
And I believe so too.
Well, and I think that the water system can be a success story if we get to a point where we start turning some of this stuff around. And who better to do that than someone who knows how to turn his own life around? So I love that, man. Let me get to some of these comments. So Blue Collar Voice, that's Tommy Nichols. He says he'll be interviewing you soon. That's awesome. Hey, Tommy, I've seen what you've done with Doc Rudman and all the interviews. Congratulations and all that stuff. I think you made a trip up there to Tallahassee with him. Appreciate what you're doing of covering what he's trying to do up there in Tallahassee. That's awesome. Looking forward to that. So it looks like
what's up, Tommy?
Kurt Cosby, he had talked about the golf course. If you've got any more questions about that, Kurt, feel free to throw them down. He said, ask Mike about the stench on Coral Street with Holly by the Sea. It's been going on for years. Yeah, I've seen that. I've driven by there.
So I think that for some of us that understand as much as you can about the water system is the dollars that should go into the infrastructure to fix some of these things. So some improvements have been made, but I mean, with that meeting that they had the other day, 30% of the tap fees go into basically a general fund instead of the the maintenance, or they called it some abbreviation. Anyways,
and that's a good point, because the water system in the county have had this adversarial relationship too for a long time.
Yeah,
and I picked up
that's
on that
the sunshine.
Because again, the county commissioners are under sunshine law.
Yeah,
and then they start asking questions about the water system, and they get nothing.
We'll go pull a permit, okay, and try to build something, and you can't get anywhere with the county until you go see the water system. So again, there's like this, and I'm going, hey, why do we have this? And again, so here we are trying to figure out how we can make it better.
Improved for sure. It
helps everybody. It just does.
Yep. Is the relationship between the two is if the water system can be more transparent and open, and people understand what's going on, then maybe you can work with the county, the state, and others to get help. But as it stands right now, that relationship's been messy at best. I remember when Dave Peach was commissioner, he was just like, I don't know, vote in new leadership. Like, it's like, get involved, right? And
I think it is.
And then Bob Cole was like, sitting there railing against him, but again, they, just didn't answer, right? A lot of times when he would send stuff and he'd.
But yes, the lift stations need to be addressed, and I think if we're going to spend more money, let's start talking about, instead of new pickup trucks, let's start talking about lift stations and. Yes, and that would improve the smell, right? Because they need an updated pump and alike.
Great. Amy says, she's talking to Kurt, she says, absolutely nuts, they can't open and run that restaurant. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had a lot of guys at the golf club the other day who were sure that the golf course was profitable, but then people are looking around and they're like, really? Like, if it's so profitable, then where's the restaurant? Where's
it was
the people?
Pretzels.
I had
right. Was it pretzels? What else was there?
Oh, they're fine. Like the employees are sweet. It's not their fault. To me, it comes back down to again years of mismanagement and a lot of that being to the former CEO. But it's open for change and to do a lot better, because I had some of these guys say, "Listen, man, we actually know it's not profitable because we used to come up here. Our wives would go get a drink or get something to eat. We'd go golf, then we'd come back and all hang out together." We can't do that anymore, and there's no one here. It's just us, and we get a drink, and that's about it. So they know what it used to be, and again, they go over to the point, in Gulf Breeze, and they like say
those same things came out when I talked to a friend the other day. He did. He said, I shot. Me and another person went to Navarre and shot around, and it was 140 something with a cart. And he said, I play at Tiger Point too, and it's basically the same price.
Yeah.
And then he commented on how wet it was.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big complaints from one of the MGA guys the other day, was how wet it was. Every time you hit the ball, you had to wash it off. So it was like the members are telling us this, and then I just went and talked to a friend, right? Totally separate. And he's got this, everybody's having the same complaints.
Right. And what I appreciate about you the most, Mike, is that you're willing to get in and fix it. Even if, you're going to take personal attacks, even if people are going to dig up the worst day of your life, and all that stuff, and try to make the campaign about that, you're still focused on the solutions, trying to fix it. I have people tell me all the time, well, if you like a city so much, or you like Gulf Breeze so much, and just move there.
Oh, yeah, that's what...
This is my home. This is where I live. This is my house. You have a home. Like we talked about in the beginning, we chose to raise our kids here in Navarre. We love Navarre. It's the potential for Navarre to learn from other places and then be even better, both for itself and maybe even better than them. Like, imagine what Navarre could do with all of the people that live in Holly by the Sea and Hidden Creek and elsewhere. if they really, started investing in that place the way it deserves.
Agreed.
It can be even better. So let's look at a couple last comments here, and then we'll finish this up. We got a couple that were emailed in. This is from Chuck. He's not on social media, but he emailed in a question. We talked about some of this already. Why do you believe the water board should not manage the golf course and have a third party to manage the operations? I think you talked about that, covered that pretty good. This is one, though, that we didn't talk about, is do you believe that the financials of the golf course should be made public for all? Why or why not? So, should they make that public?
That's a touchy one, because I think that they were using that basis that they're for profit, and that's how they sort of put the shield up to block people from that. I think if the water system owns them, then I think it should.
Yeah.
I think it should be. If the members own it, then it should be visible.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, so I might not find so here's the thought. I might not see every line item, or I might focus in on one thing, but you might pick up something different. So again, maybe as the collective, we'll be able to pick out things and say, you know what, I'm really good at that, and I can see here, listen to my viewpoint on how I think we can lower this line item or something like that. So, hopefully something positive could come from.
Yeah.
There's so many people here, like you said, the cookies, right? I mean, there's so many people here that know so many different things. I don't know everything. I know a little bit about, a lot, but
I mean, you kind of tying it all together when you talk like that, because it's not just this simple, easy question.
No,
transparency is tough.
That's what.
As someone who knows, like you've had the worst day of your life put out there for everybody to see, right? And you're still going. I remember we put out our feasibility study, right? And we put that out there. We put out budgets. Right, the previous feasibility studies had a few pages worth. We put out 5 years worth.
Yes.
And then people picked it apart.
Yes.
Said, I don't like this. I don't like that. I'm like,
yes.
So what do you do when transparency leads to mistakes that you've made, or pain, or things that you wish you could take back? You can't always take it back at that point. So what do? You fix it, right?
Yeah.
Fix it, and that's what's going to happen. I think if they kind of like show the financials, okay, wasn't quite as good as we said, guys. You're gonna have to admit that, but better that so we can fix it
than hiding it.
Deception.
Yeah, because then you get back to how do you raise your kids? Well, you tell them to be honest and truthful. So.
Right. Absolutely. We have this thing with my kids where it's typically me putting them in timeout, but there's been a few times where I made mistakes. I've had a bad day, like I was go here, I was bad.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I raised my voice. I should have done that. Go put daddy in timeout. I made a mistake. It's never okay to raise your voice at you guys. Like, I'm sorry. And they're like, they think it's the funniest thing. They're like, stay in timeout, Dad, for 2 minutes, right? And they're like watching me. I'm like, everybody makes mistakes, Yeah. But it's how you learn from them. Let me get to the one last question here. We'll see if there's any more in the chat. Mac asked about fluoride extraction from supply, or he said at least monthly testing. So the potential for PFAS and everything else. So you talked about transparency for the golf course. What do you think about testing? How much information should be available for that? Sorry, I hit the table.
I know. I talked to Rick Schaefer.
Yeah.
Was it
great
yesterday
guy.
or the day?
Or
before?
Great guy. I love Rick.
Yeah. He was able to explain it to me in a way where I had heard about the PFAS and I understood a little bit. So he gave me a little bit more in-depth knowledge on what's going on. I think at this time we should be investing a little bit more effort into finding out how to stop it, how to fix it. So I think at this moment in time we should put more energy into that without going overboard. But I don't think it's even overboard. I think we just need to test, send it away, tell us, and then. Because he was telling me everywhere that they tested, they found it out of I forget, 30 spots. So he said that they found it. And then he explained it to me how it attached to your body. And so all of a sudden it starts climbing up the ladder on things that you should worry about. So again, when you think about people didn't know asbestos was bad, I kind of mentioned that one to him, that, for decades and decades and that they use these things and you didn't know that they were bad. So I think now that it's found, and I don't think anybody's at fault, right? Because I think at the time the levels were this high, and now they go, wait a second, we want it this high. So I think it is something that needs to be moved up onto hey, we need to manage this as much as infrastructure. Yeah, it's kind of like nipping a problem in the bud. Like a little bit of transparency early, still going to have some pain.
get it out there, you fix it, as opposed to a lot of transparency later on, and now it's a huge freaking controversy, right?
Well, yeah, nobody's at fault. It's been spotted, and now let's address it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so good stuff here. Looks like Tommy's on there. He said, learn from it, fix it, move on, be better for it. I mean, that goes back to your values of what you said of honesty and integrity and being a good person. So, hey, thank you all for watching. We had a bunch of comments on this thing, bunch emailed in as well, so we're going to pick the top ones from this. If you've still got questions from Mike, feel free to email him or give him a call. He's got a GoFundMe page that I can link here that's got his contact information in it, but he's right down the street here in Navarre. Tell me about the election. How does that work? Kind of last question here is, if people want to support you, they want to vote for you, how do they do it? Because not everybody knows.
Okay, so on January 17th at Hidden Creek, you can walk in and vote. Normally, you would go into the Circuit Creek main office and vote, and they're doing construction, so it's at the golf course. You can also do the I wouldn't really call absentee. What is the actual?
So they do proxies and absentee.
Proxy, sorry.
Yeah. So proxies is if you have someone else vote for you, which I still think is weird. But you are talking about the absentee. You can request an absentee ballot right now from Holly Navarre Water System. You just email them. It's at their elections email address, which I can give you.
I just always feel funny about that one, because the only time I voted absentee was when I was overseas. So it's like, hey, it's open from 7:30 to 7. So basically, I've just been saying 7 to 7. So try to make it out there on the 17th and vote. 3 spots available, and really just tell somebody to go vote. I think we average between 200 and 300 annually, or when the seats are available, rather. That's just crazy to me. So tell somebody, let's vote, and put people on there that you think will help make the community better.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for being here. Have a great Christmas if I don't see you again before that. Thanks to everybody who tuned in for this and asked great questions and all that stuff. Absolutely, Kurt, appreciate that. But yeah, we'll definitely do more of these type of things in the future. If there's other candidates that you want to see interviewed, just let us know. I can bring them on. This is just done out of my house, so pretty easy.
Yeah, because I was just gonna say.
Yeah, sorry. Let me find that call real quick.
Yeah.
1 second. There we go.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, another one that popped up. I mean, we could sit here for all day and do this, but let's hit some key points and move on. But I think one of the MGA, the golf members, was saying, well, I don't care for Preserve Navarre. And I said, they're separate things.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're totally separate. And, I have neighbors and acquaintances that aren't for that either. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But you need water. And if you are on sewer, not a septic tank, you need that too. And you are a member. You are a part owner.
I love that.
You should get involved. I think it's I can't think of, honestly, a more important thing, really.
Yeah.
I think that it could go south in a bad way, and we could all be affected. Anyways,
I mean, whether Navarre incorporates or doesn't incorporate, you still want to have a clean water system.
Yes.
Right, and that's what you're doing this for. So God bless you, man. Thank you for doing that. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. But thank you. Y'all have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas.
All right.